Welcome to Podbreaks Africa, the sweet and sour bits of passion, where we interview African podcasters sharing their experiences, including successes, challenges, and failures, providing knowledge for budding African creatives who have chosen this path and want to invest in their passion.
Hi, everyone. It's a beautiful evening right here in Nigeria, and I am so happy to be here for the first Podbreaks Africa of APVA. That's the Association of African Podcasters and Voice Artists in 2024. My name is Tolulope Kolade. You can call me T Code, and I'll be your host for today's event. And as you know, the event is all about podcasters. Well, it's Podbreaks Africa. So if you don't know what Podbreaks Africa is, it's a platform where we come together as a community to discuss podcast related issues, right? Try to have a chit chat about the things that we experience, the latest development in the industry, how we can move forward and help each other as podcasters in wherever we're podcasting from. Okay, so that's it. And it's open to Africans and even Africans in diaspora, right? So welcome once again to Podbreaks Africa, and it's my pleasure to be your host. It's 7:03 right here in Nigeria. That's West African time, meaning we're 3 minutes into the event already. And what are we talking about today? How to show up consistently in 2024 as a podcaster. So we are definitely going to be taking a deep dive into what we would love to see ourselves become in 2024, which is consistent podcasters. Now, I know that we may have voiceover artists join in as well, because APVA is not just for podcasters, but also for voiceover artists and even poets, right? So spoken word artists who can be joining. But I can assure you that you would find a lot of valuable lessons to learn from today's event, because most certainly I'll be joined by some amazing list of guests, right? I cannot wait to speak to my guests. I've been doing a little bit of background check on everybody, right? And these people are good podcasters. They know what they are doing and they're consistent. So I'm super excited about this. And I'm just having to say a little bit here and there before, or sort of like buy time to see that every other person can join. Already, I see people joining, and I want to be mentioning your names one after the other to say thank you for joining. So I've got Gracie. Gracie is here. She's also a podcaster and also a member of APVA. So hi, Gracie. Thank you for coming up and joining the conversation this evening. Fikemi, one of our podcast guests, right? She'll be talking as well. So Fikemi, the podcaster, hi to you. Don't worry, we're going to start talking real soon. And I am making sure to follow everybody here if I wasn't following you before. So I just did that to Fikemi right now. Hafistanova. Hey, man. It's nice to see you. And I just followed you. Thank you for being here. I love the hearts, the purple hearts. Thank you guys for showing me love. And also showing APVA love. Oyiga Michael just joined. So I'm giving you a follow immediately. Welcome, Michael, and welcome to everybody joining. In case you missed the intro, this is Podbreaks Africa, and it's a platform where podcasters in Africa come together to talk about podcast-related issues for podcasters and help our, podcast community move forward, right? So thank you for being a part of this, and thank you for following me back. I'm going to get a couple of followers today, and I encourage you guys to also follow yourselves as I follow you and follow yourselves back, right? I see Feifei's in the building. Woo! Thank you for being part of this, Feifei. I'm so happy to talk to you again. It's always a pleasure to talk to Feifei. I'll say that for our guests, you can request the mic so we make you speakers, or I would also even be sending you guys mics, right? So that you can become speakers. I can't wait for us to get into the topic, because everybody wants to be consistent, because we've been taught that consistency is key, and that's how you win the game. But we a lot of us are struggling with consistency. I am struggling with consistency, and I know even you guys, one time or the other, struggled with consistency. So I can't wait for us to talk about this together um, as a society, right? Selegot is here, and it's a pleasure having you here, bro. I really want to talk to you just the same way I'm anticipating Lebang from South Africa, who will be joining us this evening so we can talk about consistency. And interestingly, I'm anticipating to talk to both of you because you podcasts about a very unique niche. Sela talks about cinematography, filming, and all of that, and we've got Lebang who talks about motherhood. And so I really want to talk about. I want to hear you guys talk about how you've been able to remain consistent in your career as podcasters, right? So now that I think we've got at least a couple of people in the building, I think we can get into today's topic fully and start the conversation. Once again, welcome to everybody. This is Podbreaks Africa. And today we are going to be, as I said before, looking at how we can show up consistently. Now, we said zero burnout, maximum energy. And that is what we want to look at today. I've got my guests already in the building, so I'll start by introducing them one after the other. And let me start from Fikemi, the podcaster. Fikemi is one of our guests. Our full name is Fikemi Aderoju. Hi, Fikemi. Can you just say hi to me too?
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you too. You sounded like you've been itching to talk. Just a few minutes ago, I was listening to your podcast, and it was just so interesting to I was listening to the episode where that was your last episode with your conversation with your friend. And it was interesting to hear podcasts that are quite original. Unfortunately, these days, people have this misconception about podcasting, and it's something we really, really need to address. But thank you for staying true to podcasting as it ought to be. Well done, Fikemi.
Thank you.
All right. For those who don't know who she is, she's a podcast host and strategist. She's the host of the Fikemi Aderoju podcast, a fun podcast that inspires, entertains, and equips people for life with experiences shared from lessons learned. So, Fikemi is going to be talking to us about how she has been able to stay consistent as a podcaster. In 2024 already, she has a couple of podcasts going. So, that's really impressive. All right, next person who will be talking to us today is Hafistinova Onitilo. Hey, Hafistinova, how you doing, man? Hello, Hafistinova. You can unmute your mic now if you can hear me. Okay, I guess Hafistinova is kind of like trying to get to a place where he can talk. Hey, man. Okay, I'm going to spare you some minutes to get all of that put
Good
together.
evening. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, good evening. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you here, man. Afistinova, you're doing a great job as of music podcaster, if I'll use that word, and so much so
Yeah,
that
good
you've
evening. Nice to be here.
yeah. I have a question for you, Afistinova. How many APVA awards have you been nominated for?
I've been nominated for two, and I've won one.
Wow. Wow, that's impressive. Two nominations back to back. I mean, in 2022 and 2023, and you
Yeah,
won one. And that shows how consistent Hafezinova is actually. And well done on your award win. And what's that about again? I think that was the music podcast of the year, if I'm not
definitely.
mistaken.
Music podcast of the year. Yes.
Definitely. Well done, man. So,
Thank you.
yeah, Afistinova is also going to be talking about consistency in 2024. And if you are wondering what the name of his podcast is, it's Chacha Music Review Podcast. So thank you for being a part of this, Afistinova. I'll be coming
Thank you
back
for
to
having
you
me.
real soon. All right, man. So next person on the list, I've got the delectable Fei. Hi, Fei.
Hi, Tolu. How you doing?
I'm fine. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I don't know, I think it's because you are an audio person, an audio producer. So for me, it's always like I want to learn from Fefe. I'm still looking forward to attending a master class where Fefe is teaching us about audio production.
Well, someday. Thank you so much for having me, though.
You're welcome. So, for those who don't know, Feifei is the founder of Ninja Pod Hub, one of the most vibrant podcast communities for Nigerian or Nigerian podcasters, right? And she's into audio editing, mixing, and mastering. So, she's going to be talking to us about consistency as well in podcasting. What else have I got? I've got Sele Got. Hi, Sele. I hope I'm getting your pronunciation, I mean, your name pronunciation right. Can you unmute? Oh, okay. Sarah dropped back to being a listener, so it's going to be joining me real soon. All right, guys. So we've got Fikemi here, Hafiz Nova, Feifei, we've got Selet, so that's four people already. And the fifth person would be Lebang Kosana from South Africa. Again, the topic is how to show up consistently in 2024 in case you're just joining. And of course, in case you're just joining, I'll introduce myself again. I am Tolu Lope Kolade T Code. I'm a voiceover artist and also a podcaster. I'm the creative partner at APVA, and I'm the host of the Everything Voiceovers podcast, The African Perspective. All right, so let's get the conversation rolling. We want to look at how we can get more consistent and shift away from just wanting to create content to creating a routine that is consistent and we can also enjoy. But one of the things that we cannot move away or shift away from addressing if we want to address consistency is the direct opposite or the arch enemy of consistency, which is the fact that a lot of times we come in real early, we come in with a lot of energy, and very quickly we burn out. So I want us to address burnout a little bit before we then delve into strategies with which we can remain consistent. Let's talk about burnout. And I want to open this to any of our guests, right? Because maybe if you've gone through burnout anytime in your career as a podcaster, I would love to hear your experience and how you came out of burnout and became consistent. So who's gonna go first? You want to share your experience with burnout, Fikemi, Hafistinova, um, Fei. Let's hear it. Okay, Fefe, let me start from you. I'm having a feeling that you've had to deal with burnout one time or the other. So let's start from you.
I was hoping one of the other podcasters would go first since I'll be coming from a podcast production standpoint, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Um, start here. So, burnout, I mean, it's something that each one of us here can relate to, especially when you're trying to put out content consistently. For me, I try to pace myself a lot.
Mm,
And that comes from a place of, having the experience of having, different podcasts on my table for me to work on, and everybody's deadline, wrapped around my neck.
mm,
So one of the things that I do is I work in stretches. So my calendar is currently mapped out in 10-week stretches. So after 10 weeks, I must take a break, a 1 week break, to just relax, clear my head, listen to, new stuff, read about new things, what's happening in the community and around the world of podcasting. And trust me, it's not like it's an art that I've mastered, because somewhere inside of me, there's still that workaholic that feels like 1 week is too much to be resting, doing nothing.
mm,
But it's just a way in which I pace myself, because very quickly you can get into a lot of things that are exciting and interesting to you. And at the end of the day, you just find out that you are at a point where you can't be as productive anymore. You can't even be as creative anymore. Everything
mm,
tends to sound the same and redundant. And, for me, that's not a good feeling. So I generally try to pace myself. When I feel the burnout coming, it starts with like a lack of motivation to even work.
mm,
So I just start to slow down a bit. When people come and say, "Oh, we need to do this and this," I just say, "Okay, can I do it maybe in 2 weeks or next week or something like that?" Because I can sense that I will be useless to you, all
Mm,
burnt out from the amount of work that's been done. So generally, I just try to pace myself, work in 10-week blocks. And when I can't afford a week off, I try at least 3 days, just so that my mind is shut down for that period. And there's this meme that goes around that creative people have to sit around and do nothing for a while. It's not a myth,
mm,
it's actually very true,
mm,
because you keep creating and putting out stuff, and you're giving away part of your energy. So if you don't have time to refresh or
mm,
relax, start again, then you have nothing to give out. So that'll be my
mm.
contribution to that.
That's really, really, a very strong point that you've made there, Feifei. Talking about burnout and how you just have to sometimes take a break and shut down. Like, personally, I think I'm edging towards burnout myself. I started this year with a bang, and I didn't anticipate the amount of work that I'll be doing. In the past 2, 3 weeks, I've been ridiculously busy. And once in a while, I just try to escape from the studio like I did today. And I was thinking about telling all of my voiceover students that you guys, this weekend is out of it. But I think I need that time for myself. So yeah, avoiding burnout will help us to get to consistency. Let's hear from, and thank you once again, Feifei. She's speaking from a producer's perspective. So a producer who has a lot of podcasts to work on and other production activities. Let's talk about the podcasters themselves. Hafiz Nova happens to be a very, very consistent podcaster. So I really want to hear what's yeah, or how you've been able to deal with burnout, or that period where you just have a lot of work doing and it's like it's getting to you. Because I understand that you're not just a podcaster, you're a celebrity photographer, you're a digital strategist, and you have all of these things going, and yet you still make out time every week for your podcast. So how have you been able to handle burnout or just having too much of work to do?
Okay, so I think I would go with some of the things that Fefe said about pacing yourself. For me, I kind of use like a timeline, and I kind of schedule what I want to do when it comes to podcasting. So I know that technically I put out an episode every Saturday. So I look like, okay, in a month, how many Saturdays do we have? We have like maybe 4 or 3 Saturdays, or even 5 Saturdays at times, right? So I kind of say, okay, there are some episodes that I have to record live, which means the episode has to be like a day before I put it out. And there's some episode I can pre-record down, so it doesn't have to be immediately I record, I have to put it out. So what I do is I just draft like a timetable, and within me I have that timetable. I say, okay, you know what, let me have episodes that I can record down, and then after like let's say 2 months give or take that I've done consistent back to back immediate episode whereby I record and I put out immediately. I just decide within myself and say, okay, you know what, for this week, just take a break. Don't do any recording. Don't do anything concerning the podcast. Just put out an episode that you've recorded out already and put it out. To the people, they feel like you're still doing it, you're still recording, you're still putting, but within yourself, you're already taking, that break. And that can only be possible because you already, before what I do is before I start the season, right? I just like create a timetable and say, okay, this is how I want it to be. The first 2 months I put out episode. By the time I'm putting out some episode on the third month, I'm already taking my break personally. I'm taking my time to refresh and to have that energy within me. And there's also this thing whereby I try to control myself, which because at times it's always very, very difficult where there's like you're on your break and then there's like a trending topic that you can jump on, or you should jump on, or you want to jump on, but then you're on your break and you decide to say, oh, do I allow this go? Do I For me, I just try to, it's more of self-control, because the thing is it's better for you to take a rest than for you to just burn out completely, and then you now begin to give your audience low quality or not what you're supposed to give them because you're tired. And the truth is the audience, they also understand that you're human and you're bound to get tired, right? Everybody gets tired, so it's not bad for you to take a break. I mean, there are days whereby even if when I've planned that, okay, well, next week is when I want to take my break, but before that next week itself, it gets extremely busy for me that I can't even record, let alone what they used to call it, put out an episode. That week will just go like that, like nothing. I'm not even, it's not like I'm relaxing, it's not like I'm taking a break, but I'm just too busy, to do anything. But most importantly, what I do is I just schedule my I have a timetable where I just use to guide myself, and it's okay, by the time you enter the third quarter of this year, you should take a break at this particular time. By the time you enter the second quarter of the year, you should take a break by this particular time. And that's just what has been able to help me. I schedule the break and I look at myself that, okay, I want to stretch myself for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and then I take a 1 week break and then recharge and then continue and then take a break. And just that's how I work.
Thank you so much, Hafiz Nova. Unfortunately, the network got me out of the room for just a few minutes, but I'm back. So I got the part where you were talking about scheduling and how that has helped you taking a break after a couple of weeks, maybe quarterly, and you're able to come back. And I think that is very, very brilliant. It really works. I have tried it a little bit. And yeah, so thank you very much for sharing that. All right, moving on, we've got Selegot here. And earlier on, I wanted to introduce you as one of our speakers, but then I saw that you moved back to the listeners section. So, Selegot, can you say hi to us?
Hi guys, good evening. Nice to be here.
Good, good evening. Nice to have you here too. And how's it going with filmmaking? Because I know you're a filmmaker and director.
Yeah. Filmmaking is slow and steady, so yeah, it's going all right. Just
All
yeah, things tend to move a bit slower with
right.
film, so yeah.
All right. And in case anybody's wondering why we're talking about filmmaking, Selegot is a podcaster, a film director, and a filmmaker, the host of the Nigeria Filmmaker podcast. So it's beautiful to have someone who is specialized in something and his podcast is built around that. Uh, Glad to have you as our guest today.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll be coming back to you real soon. And for those who are just joining, shout out to you all. I see the IP series here. I see BK here. I see the podcast sessions. I see Alexander. I see Gloria. I see Rodney. I see Mary. You all are highly welcome. Thank you for being a part of this. So it's the Podbreaks Africa. Let me talk to Fikemi. So Fikemi, Hafiztinova and Feifei, they've done a bit about talking about burnout. Let's talk about strategies for consistency, or rather, let's start with why it is difficult to be consistent. I know it sounds like the same thing, but I feel we should really talk about it because if we don't know why we are not consistent, we might not be able to attack the challenge, right? So, for you personally, the times that you failed to be consistent in podcasts or in podcasting, what would you say were responsible for this? What factors can you point out to, that made it impossible for you to continue podcasting in a very consistent sequence?
Um, okay. Shout out to Feifei and Happy Sonova for everything you've said. It's actually brilliant. For me, I would say when I struggled with consistency, it was because of lack of discipline. I actually wasn't disciplined. I was still figuring out what discipline was. And I started my podcast in uni. So I had a lot of schoolwork to deal with, right? I had a lot of balancing work, schoolwork with podcasting, scheduling my classes to fit into podcasting, recording time and stuff like that. But the difference between when I started being consistent and when I was not is discipline. I became a very disciplined person, and that's what helped me become consistent. And also because I found, like, I remembered my why. So, like, based on like our normal human nature, when you're tired or stressed out or you're not interested in doing something, you're just like, I'm not going to do it. Like, let me just rest. But the fact that I had my why at the back of my mind, and just, the reviews I get from listeners, and just the, positive energy that comes whenever I release an episode, like, kept me going. Right. So
Mm,
I would say what the main difference was, or what caused inconsistency, was lack of discipline and forgetting my why, because that's
mm,
what keeps you going when times get tough. Because obviously podcasting is, well, for some people podcasting is not their entire life, right?
mm,
So, like, with the example of being in school, I was in school, doing other like SRC and school responsibilities, and I also had to show up as a podcaster as well because
Mm,
I actually love podcasting. So like in times where I'm like, oh my god, I'm tired from class, I don't think I can record this episode. I would still record it. Even times, you know how hostels can be, right? Hostels will be
yeah.
crowded. Everybody's back from classes at the same time, and I'm like, how am I going to record this episode? There were times where I would enter my wardrobe in school so I could have quiet time and like stuff it up with pillows just so like the noise isn't too much. And that's how passionate I was about podcasting. So I feel like your discipline plays a huge
Mm,
role, right? Just you telling yourself, we're going to do this and we're going to do it well. So even when your body is tired, you just remind yourself and like, we have something to deliver. There are people listening. You told them Thursday. So what are you going to say? You were tired?
mm,
No, not saying that it's not okay for you to take a break, but like every opportunity of like just letting it go shouldn't be taken. So you just saying, I'll record it another week. That's just you building inconsistency.
mm. Wow. I like that, Fikemi. And that has opened me up to another world of thinking about how trying to show up all the time, even though that could be a type of stress in itself, but then because you know that you've got listeners counting on you and waiting for the next episode to drop, you just need to show up. And I really like and appreciate that feedback from you. And I'm going to be, having more of that conversation with Faye very soon. But I want to talk to Selegot about this, which Fikemi has brought up. We're talking about consistency. We've addressed, or we've actually seen burnout as one of the challenges, right? And but Fikemi, our comments made me realize that there could be something else, in the equation that makes us a little bit inconsistent. And maybe that's the lack of the expected feedback. Like Fikemi said, the feedback she gets from people, they kind of like help to sustain our interest to want to come back. But then there's a huge part that discipline plays. So, Selegot, for you, who you are in a very niche uh, field, meaning that you might not get as much or the kind of audience that other people who are in more general fields are getting, how do you deal with um, times when you're not getting the feedback you want, but yet you still need to show up? Because sometimes it feels like you're just having the podcast for the sake of having the podcast, especially when you're not getting feedback. So, how have you been able to deal with that and manage that over time?
Okay, so yeah, I guess this applies to. I wanted to even talk about, like, I guess something I struggled with. But for my podcast, I run 24 episode seasons. So for like 24 weeks, I keep releasing episodes, and for every 4 episodes, I release like 3 episodes with a guest, and then one just by myself. And I guess in that sense, like it's kind of like I have to deal with scheduling and editing episodes from like with 3 guests, and then for the one that I have to do by myself, because I just tend to make my points and end it. So those are a bit shorter. So they kind of help me. Okay, like okay, I know I'm going to finish these 3 episodes with guests, and then this one is going to be less stressful. So that's kind of helped me. I must say that my podcast has had 4 seasons. I would say that for the first 3 seasons, I have kind of kept like a, would I say, 100% consistent record, where probably like I just, maybe the latest I've put up an episode is like 8 hours late. But then with my last season, I think something personal came up, and then I missed posting that episode. And what happened was that I wanted to get back to posting and recording the episodes, but one thing I in a way I think, because I haven't like kind of cultivated the community, so there isn't always that kind of direct feedback, and it just felt like I was talking to nobody. So in a sense I was like, yeah, why am I even stressing to be consistent. But I think for me, that's one thing I'm trying to work on currently, to, I guess, build that community where there's kind of more feedback, and at least I know that the work I'm doing is kind of important. I mean, it's kind of important based on some of the numbers I see, but I'll just like it to be more qualitative. But I think, yeah, um, cultivating that community would, and being directly accountable to people with names and faces rather than just the numbers. I guess it will help with that consistency.
Fantastic. Like this is getting more interesting, from talking about burnout to talking about discipline, and now Sele got us locked into the talk about community, which I see to be very important. I feel like it's going to really help people to stay consistent when there is a community you are directly accountable to, as Fikemi also pointed out. So, anyways, where is she again? Oh my. Lebang was with us a few seconds ago. Lebang Kosana from South Africa. She's one of our guests. I can't see her right now, but I hope she joins again so we can talk to her. I believe Lebang has a great community already, and I would like to have that conversation with her to see how she's been able to maintain consistency as a podcaster. All right, so let's talk about something that I think Selegot was also driving towards. I'm not sure if that is exactly it, but one thing I'm definitely sure about is the fact that there is a type of structure to his system of podcasting. Like saying he gets to record 3 episodes with guests and 1 episode, which is a solo episode. And he does that and he records about 25 episodes per season. And he's got 4 seasons, which by my calculations should be like about 100 episodes. Like, kudos to you, man. So that shows me that you've been intentional and you've put a lot of structure to your podcasting. So let me speak to Feifei about this. Feifei, you're a producer, meaning that you get to produce podcasts for people and you would understand the importance of structure and the word batch creating. So let's talk about the reality of batch creating, opening a structure around it. Um, Give us an intro into batch creating and the importance of it before we then key this into consistency.
Okay, so batch creating helps a lot, especially in times where different things can get in the way, personal life, unforeseen circumstances and all that. And batch creating simply means that you can create 10, 15 episodes already before you start publishing, or even while you're publishing you can still be creating other episodes, so that by the time your scheduled day comes you have something to post. Sorry, what was the second part of the question again?
Yeah, well, I wanted you to introduce to us what batch creating is, as even a producer. Then before we then key it into consistency, but then you can talk about how that can help you to stay consistent as a podcaster.
Yeah, absolutely. So just like Stella was saying, he has a structure in place where he puts out 24 episodes. And I would even say kudos to you, because that is a long stretch. A few podcasters I know would rather do quarterly, which is 13 episodes. So they have stuff to put out for 13 weeks and then take a break, and come back with another 13 to 14 episodes. So, and this helps you stay consistent because you already have these things, and some platforms allow you to even schedule all of these podcast episodes, so you don't have to go back each week to try and get it done. And a lot of things can come in the way of do a weekly podcast. Not like it's impossible to do stuff on a weekly, but it literally takes a village to pull stuff like that off, especially when it's not like you're doing a one-liner type podcast or a 1 minute type podcast. Even if you're doing that, you still have to plan because it would be really interesting if your scheduled release date comes and you don't have anything. And if you're not planning to have a bulk of episodes where you've already taken the time to do your research, know what comes with what, maybe look at the dates and say, okay, if I'm going to talk about, say, I don't know, love in filmmaking, I could do it around, say, Valentine's Day. So in my next 24, this love episode has to be a part of it because it will go, with Valentine's Day, or it's International Women's Day in a couple of weeks. Do I want to do something that speaks to that? Is that type of podcast that I'm, into? And you need time to like plan all of these things, putting together great content takes a lot of time. So you're going to have weekly episodes come out, and you have not made proper plan to do your research, do your scripting, do your recording, do your editing, which a lot of podcasters hate, and do your final production and put it out, then you are within risk of, not meeting those deadlines. And I think Kemi who mentioned something about, being accountable to your listeners, as a solo podcaster, and someone who is podcasting as a hobby on topics that they're passionate about, you may not have the luxury of accountability partners, which a larger group of producers may have. So your listeners become your only accountability partners to the episodes you put out. And most of the time, I know the few podcasters that are serious with their podcast never want to fail their listeners, and if they find themselves short of an episode for that particular week, it's almost like, oh my God, how am I going to face these guys? So you just have to either lean towards batch production, which is do it within your capacity, because if you then overdo it, then you are now back to square one where we started, was burnout, right? So if you can do 5 at a stretch and then take a break and continue with another 5, take a break, continue, at least you have stuff in the bank that will go out for your calendar season for your podcast.
All right. Thank you so much, Feifei. I think that's a very, very good point that you've dropped. Batch creating. And I would still like us to go back to that real soon so that you can teach us how to exactly batch create for those who will be exploring batch creating. Because I'm aware that not everybody has that. I mean, it's not like it's not possible, but for some podcasts, they're just designed to be a weekly thing. Maybe because everything is inspired by what happens during the week, right? So, but for those who want to take on the batch rating route, we will be talking about that in a bit. Okay, so now that I've got Lebang in the building, I'm super excited. Hi, Lebang.
What up, familia? How are you, T Code?
I'm very good. I'm doing very well. First of all, congratulations on winning the podcast of the year 2023 APVA Awards. Like,
Whoop, whoop. Thank you, thank you. I'm still on that high. Um,
ooh.
yeah, no, it's been absolutely amazing. It's been awesome, just being able to, serve the audience in such a way. Just to be recognized like that was just amazing. Even just to be part of this conversation, I'm like, oh man, this is so cool. So hi to you and hi to everybody as well that's at home listening.
I mean, it's beautiful. We had to listen to what you have to say about this conversation. You've been podcasting for a while now. You have a brand out of this, being a mother of five, I think, and you've been able to build a podcast around that. It's super amazing, and I can't wait to hear what you've got to share with us about your consistency as a podcaster. So, how's podcasting going for you? Especially, I mean, you're in South Africa, right? And but then you're
Yeah.
a mother, you are an MC, you are a radio presenter. I think you have a lot going, and you still manage to stay consistent. Tell us about how you manage all this.
Yeah, look, I'll be honest, it's definitely not the easiest thing to pull off. And yes, you're right, mother of 6. Well, it'll be 6 in a couple of weeks anyway, but
Woo!
yeah, still cooking in the oven. But podcasting is, it's my first love in that it's giving back, right? It's a service. So as far as the consistency goes, as far as where do you get the energy to stand up and do this every week, and nobody's paying you for it, so what are you gaining out of it? It's such a fulfilling duty that I feel like I am solely responsible for, as far as speaking to my audience, empowering my audience, educating them, entertaining them, keeping them up to speed with what I believe matters, is something that I've put upon myself. Nobody asked me to do the podcast. Nobody, requested it. I just went out and said, you know what, there is a market of African parents who are stuck in traditional methods of raising their kids. And I just want them to know that they don't have to do what they were taught growing up. They're allowed to get more modern, and we're allowed to switch things up. And parenting can be fun. And it's not, there's many, like, you know, things that come with being a parent, and especially like as a young African person. So I kind of felt like it was just my duty to just go out there and like speak to my peers who are struggling, whether you've got one child, whether you've got four, whether you've got 10. A child is a child is a child, and they will test you, child. They'll test you. So I can almost say, doing the podcast is like a nice get away from the noise,
Mm,
break away from the everydayness of it and give back to my community. And I know that there's like, even if it's just one listener who
mm,
needs to hear what I'm saying, that's enough for me. I've done my part. And that's the thing that keeps me going. It does get difficult. There's times when I'm like, oh, this week, do I have to do it? But, to the point of some of the other speakers, it's like, recording in batches and recording when you can, as much as you can, so that you can at least release in a nice, consistent manner. You don't always have to record live every week. Find what works for you. Get comfortable in that nice schedule. Find a nice team that you can trust to help you if you're on your own. Hold yourself accountable. Don't,
mm,
it's like having a gym partner. A gym partner will call you every morning and say, hey, 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 let's go. If you're not feeling like it doesn't matter that you don't feel like it. You got into this contract with the audience. You made this promise to the listeners that you'll be there for them at the time you said you're going to be for them. Be there
mm,
for them. So it's almost irresponsible to not show up.
mm,
And that's
mm,
something that I kind of keep drilling into my head whenever I just don't feel like it. I'm like, if not me, then who?
mm. Wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Lebang. And in case anyone is wondering what the title of our podcast is, it's Life with Lebang, the winner of Podcast of the Year 2023 APVA Awards. It's such a beautiful podcast to listen to. And you said something about giving back to your community, and you also mentioned team. So these are two concepts that I would still love us to touch on. I hope we have the time to do that because as Fikemi mentioned, and yeah, there's a need for, and then Selegot also emphasized the need for a community, which I think you've been able to do very well. And I would want you to talk about it, but that will be after I've also gotten one or two responses from our other guests. So, how you've been able to build a community for your podcast, and then we'll talk about the team structure. Now, when I say team, I believe most of us would know that there are two major types of podcasters. We've got the indie podcasters, and that's for those of us who handle almost everything on on our own. So you're the podcaster, you're the producer, you're the social media manager, you're the community handler, whatever that is, right? So those are the indie podcasters, and I guess we will fall into that category, are most likely to struggle more with inconsistency. Not to say that the others don't, but because of the ton of load that you do behind the scene, it's a lot of work. So we will talk about, let's talk about from the perspective of the indie podcaster now, how much of a struggle it is to to be consistent. And I want Hafiz Nova to respond to this question. Visnova, I think you're an indie podcaster. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I know you are, or I think you are, same as Fikemi. So, how have you been able to navigate being an indie podcaster, editing your works, getting guests, sending emails, putting up social media content, all of that, and you still remain consistent?
Okay, yes. So, yes, you're correct. I'm an indie podcaster, and for me, I think what works for me, just like everybody has rightly mentioned in some of the things they've said, is just having like a structure that can work for you. And for me, I think the structure that I use most of the time is what I actually call the 1 hour consistency plan. That's what I call it in terms of. So I put out an episode every Saturday, right? But what I do is in a day that leads to Saturday, I just take an hour for my podcast. So on Monday, I take 1 hour out of the 24 hours that I have, and I say, okay, this is Monday. What do I want to do for my podcast? Do I do research? Do I design? Do I reach out to guests? Do I record? What exactly do I want to do? So I kind of just take, okay, Monday, I'm doing research. And then for that 1 hour, it doesn't necessarily mean I can probably do the whole research in that 1 hour, or maybe reach out to all the guests I want to reach out to for that 1 hour. But I just know for 1 hour, I do something concerning the podcast so that by the time I get to Tuesday, if I'm lucky enough, I've done my research, everything I need to do on Monday. By Tuesday, the next thing will be okay. Let me move into what they used to call it now, scripting. If I'm to script, then I do my scripting on Tuesday. By Wednesday, I move to recording. By Thursday, I move to editing. Then by Friday, I move to designing the flyer. And Saturday, the episode is out. So Sunday, I just take a chill and I just, rest, and just then Monday we go again. So that's one thing that has been, able to help me in terms of knowing how well I can manage my time. All I do is I just need 1 hour in a day for my podcast. And if that 1 hour is the time that I'm supposed to actually get my rest, I still go through that pain of, look, like I think the last speaker rightly said about, you have to show up. You've promised them you are supposed to be there, so you have to be there. And that is what I just try to, like, man, I'm supposed to be resting now, but these people, if I don't put out an episode on Saturday, they will definitely come for me. There are those that will reach out to me and then tell me, hey, what's up? Is there no episode this week? I remember last weekend I didn't put out an episode because I was so busy and I didn't even have time to do anything. And someone reached out like, what's up now? Today is Sunday. Is there no new episode? I'm like, I had to apologize and say, sorry, man, I didn't have the time and stuff like that. And immediately that person just said that from that moment, I just started working on the next episode, making sure that no, the next episode has to drop, on time. And of course, also batch creating is also something, that helps. So I've been able to create my podcast in a way that it allows me to create episodes ahead. And I think that also has to do with the creativity that I have within me, because like you rightly mentioned, there are some podcasts that is built around you just having to be on your toes, like you have to just drop it as it is hot. Let me use that language. But then again, we are all creatives. I think that's the most important thing. We are all creative, so we should always find a way to be able to create something that gives us that time, that limit, that space. I've been able to create my podcast to a point whereby right now my audience do not even need to hear my voice on the podcast before they can actually listen to the podcast. I've been able to at least bring in two people to assist me as like a co-host. So if I know like, okay, this month I'm not going to be available, all I need to just call those two people and say, hey, please, I need you to record this episode for me. I need you to record that episode for me. And that, comes in. But most importantly, what I do is I always try to make sure 1 hour in a day I dedicate to my podcast, no matter what it is. Even if that particular hour comes and there's really nothing to do, I go over everything that I have done all through and decide, okay, look, this is what I'm going to do for 1 hour. And now I'm so used to it that at times I didn't even need an hour to do what I need to do. Maybe it's just 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And because I'm so used to it right now, that 1 hour plan, I really don't do it anymore. I can sit down and say, okay, you know what, today is Friday. I want to do everything that I have to do. The only time I go in line with that 1 hour is when I know that, okay, this month or this week is going to be extremely busy for me
Okay.
and I won't have that time. And that's what I do.
Wow. Wow. Hafiz Nova, so great stuff you've been sharing with us. Like, I feel like this is a masterclass already because Hafiz Nova is giving us hacks to this thing. You see him come out every week with episodes. Man's got like a daily routine for his podcast. And I think this is really, really important for those of us who are indie podcasters. By the way, indie means you're an independent podcaster because you've got to do everything by yourself, right? And also the part where you mentioned having people to work with you or co-host, as it were. I think that's very, very, very brilliant. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us, Hafiz Tanova. And now I'm going to go to Fikemi, who also has remained consistent. And she mentioned earlier uh, how getting feedbacks helps her staying consistent. Now, Fikemi, I'm going to go off a bit from everything everybody has said so far because I feel like we also need to address this particular one. We talked about burnouts earlier. How about talking about the other reasons? Like sometimes you're not just feeling like you're in the mood to podcast. And these times it's not because you're lazy. It's probably just that oh, let's say for instance, you just experienced a heartbreak and you don't want to do anything at a time. I don't know if you've had these periods in your life. If you have, were you able to ignore your feelings and come to do the podcast? Or did you even see it as an opportunity to talk about your feelings on the podcast? Or did you just say, let me take a break? I'm not podcasting this week. I'm going to miss out on the consistency, but then we'll go again next week. Or has it been a case where these feelings sort of like stayed for so long and it kind of like crashed the consistency? In short, how have you been able to manage your emotions and the ups and downs of life and still stay consistent as a podcaster?
Oh wow, okay. That was that was a lot. You know, when you're talking about the different things, it felt like you had an insight into my life at a point.
Woo!
So yeah,
Okay.
wow, this is actually really good because when like everyone has been like sharing amazing tips. Shout out to all the speakers so far, and I love the fact that we've brought it back to reality because we're human beings. We face tough times, and in as much as you might have the plans and everything, things can come up. So for me, I have experienced every form of it, right? So like I said earlier, I started podcasting while I was still in uni, right, and that comes with its own fair share of stress, right? University is not fun sometimes. It's a lot of work, right? So um and then graduating from uni, right? Because in uni it was 5 years. So I had to learn a particular structure, put a particular structure in place rather to make things work out for me. So I knew my free periods. I knew when there weren't a lot of students in hostel. So during my lunch break, like lunch break in on my timetable, I would go to my room, record the episode, close all the windows, and then when I'm done, I change again, go back to class, right, to finish up with school. So like I put a structure to it, even though I was stressed out and I was upset and all of that, because lecturers can be funny, but I use that to create content, right? So I'd come talk about how it's like being a female engineering student. I would have my friends come on and we'll talk about it. So I channeled the experience and the struggles I was facing into content because I realized that I actually couldn't bring myself to a point where I could just clearly come up with, or just deliver content I wanted to deliver genuinely. And that was because after class, I'm stressed out. After a long day, I'm stressed out. After a lot of activities. So my natural reaction was just to sleep. Right. I just want to sleep and rest. But when I tell a friend, like, well, I'd like to record a podcast with you, they would come with their own energy. And that's why I used to actually keep myself going and be consistent in school. And now that I'm done with school and I'm working and I did NYSC. Last year was actually really crazy because I had all the emotions. I would be in traffic. Let's say I put a schedule for, okay, I'll be back from work by 6. I'll record by 7:30 and I'm still in traffic till 9 p.m. So when I get back, I'm obviously not interested in picking up my phone or whatever to record. I just want to sleep. So managing all of that, all I did was use my podcast as an outlet. So I'd come on. I don't know if people that listen to my podcast are here, they'll hear me talking about how Lagos traffic was frustrating me. I'll probably just share the experience. And funny enough, it always ended up being like those episodes always ended up being the best episodes. on my podcast, because I would have people relate to it a lot. Like, oh my god, I was in traffic as well. I was even listening to this in traffic, and I'm just like, okay. And even recently, like after putting a structure to things and having a schedule, I got a new role at work. So it's a lot more responsibilities. Now I have to come up with another schedule. And I plan to also talk about that as content on my podcast,
Mm.
because sometimes it's just overwhelming. But I don't I don't, what's the right word? I don't disregard the effect of showing up consistently. I feel like it has more of an effect, not just for my listeners, but for me as well. Because my podcast is more like a personal journal. It's something that has healed me over the years. So, like, me showing up there alone just helps me feel like, I'm not, all I do in life is not just work, 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 right? It's
Yeah.
also like a way for me to connect. Yeah.
Wow. Wow, thank you so much, Fikemi. That's so original of you, talking about how sometimes you just make these experiences even the theme of the podcast episode, and they go a long way, right? Like they're some of like the best episodes you've recorded, because let's face it, we're all humans and we go through the ups and downs of life, and sometimes these things affect how we come consistent on the podcast, but you've got a great strategy. Well, guys, it's almost an hour into this space already, and it's just sounding like we're about to hit the main points. So I want to say a big thank you to everybody that's been listening. We will be coming to the end, gradually. But for now, I just want to say a big thank you. I see people from different countries in Africa joining, and it's so beautiful. I'm hoping that Lebang comes in again so we can talk about the community thing. But thanks to all of the speakers as well. You guys, you've been saying incredible stuff that I think I can even make a book out of. Okay, so let me come to Select Got, and then I'll come to Fei. So we talk about quality and batch creating. But for Selegot, let's talk about one other culprit that has stopped or that has hindered a couple of people from podcasting as well. And this particular culprit is creative block. So on some days, it's your emotional issues you're battling with. On some other days, it's the burnout. And on some days, it's just the creative block where you just can't find something to talk about. Like it's like ideas are not flowing anymore. And you wait and you wait and you wait. Maybe you then go to take a break, and you know how that might affect your consistency. So for you, how have you been able to cope with this challenge? And please feel free to add whatever, any other thing you want to add to it. I mean, talking about how we can stay consistent as podcasters in 2024. So talk about the creative block thing and consistency.
Okay, so for me, I would say, out of this the interviews that I do for my podcast and then the solo episodes, I sometimes kind of struggle with the solo episodes. And I guess one thing that has worked for me, because you're trying to, I guess, talk about and address things that people also encounter. So what has helped me in kind of sourcing for topics sometimes is like, going to message boards where people are asking questions and, everybody's contributing and everybody's answering. So maybe with things that I, have something to add to the conversation, I kind of pick up topics from there and, form it as a basis for my episode. And, yeah, people have reached out to me and told me that, because for my podcast, the solo episodes are the shorter ones. So, it has been the part of my podcast that has even been more viral than the regular episodes. But in terms of general consistency, I would say like accountability partners, community, and yeah, like another thing that's worked for me, because for me I'm not always under the pressure to record timely content, because for me, I interview filmmakers. So sometimes I'm talking to them about what they are currently working on or what they have worked on in the past. So, batch recording help is it works for me in terms of what I do. But I think, yeah, batch recording, having, you know, the community with that you actually know, not just the numbers. Okay, 10 people listen to my podcast. Okay, you at least know five of their names, and you think about them when you're trying to slack, and then you come back to your senses and keep up with it. I think those are, like, for me, those are the things that have been helpful, and will help other people in being consistent.
Mm. Wow, that's beautiful. You know, something you just said now that caught my attention so much is how you mentioned that sometimes just knowing the names of your community, like people in your community, it makes it more personal. And I feel like even personally, that's something I should adopt in my own podcasting because I've got a ton of people listening to me. I hardly know their names. So I have some adjustments to do. And I hope people are taking notes because these things are like the hacks to staying consistent as a podcaster. And I'm looking forward to everybody here who is a podcaster being consistent in podcasting in 2024. So thank you so much, Selegot. Let me speak to Fei Fei. Fei Fei, the audio producer. Hi, Fei Fei.
Okay.
So I've got a question for you, right? I know you're doing a lot of production. That's like the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
So but when was the last time you hosted or you spoke on a podcast?
Wow. Um. So sometime last year, I put out an original production of mine. It's
Mm,
called Abaco is a Story in Pidgin English.
mm,
It's about 12 episodes, if I'm not mistaken. But they're really short, like 7 minutes tops. But it was a narration and a whole sound design type of thing. So yeah, that was the last time that I would say I put out something. Though I wasn't the narrator or anything like that. The last narration I did myself was a project called Ashrebi, and that's like maybe 3 years ago.
mm. I like your style of podcasting, because you don't put yourself in under pressure like you have to do this weekly. You just do like, okay, I'm releasing a project and you
Yeah.
do that really well. So that leads me to the next thing I'd like us to talk about, which is the fact that when you do your projects, I can tell or I assume that you're not just the only person. Like for you, it's like it takes a village to create your project, even though you're the mastermind. But I believe you have other voices and other creators working with you, right?
Yeah. Too.
Oh, awesome, awesome. So I am having, or I want us to have this conversation, um, in regards to how we can help ourselves stay consistent. Which I feel having a team, right, can be of help. Havistinova talked about how he has cool podcasters that once in a while they just get to help him with the podcast and all of that. So for you, you are a behind the scenes person. Tell us about the ecosystem of, I know that sounds like a big word, but it's doesn't have to be very complicated. Like, you understand what it takes to put out a podcast. Can you talk about how we can take advantage or leverage, let me use that word, on the other parts of podcasting, like every other part, like the graphics, the social media, whatever, to
Yeah.
make a podcast have quality and be consistent? Do you understand the question?
I think I do, but I'll start answering. But if it feels like I'm not answering your question, you can stop me, right?
Okay, please go on.
uh, so something that I try to encourage podcasters to do is collaborate, but it's not an easy gospel to preach, right? And and that's mainly because a lot of podcasters work solo, right? So, for example, now when Fikemi was, talking, she juggled a whole engineering career, building a whole engineering career with podcasting, which is a career on its own, you know, and she's just by herself. And because of the ease of creating a podcast, everybody wants to just get up, put on their microphone and do it. And, without considering it as a full scale of work. For me, I see podcast production the way I look at movie production. Just that we're not doing pictures, we're doing just audio only, right? And so always approach it. So there are several angles to it, like you mentioned, the social media part. A lot of people who know me know that social media is not my strong point at all, but I need to promote my podcast. Also, I'm not a graphics designer, but I need a logo for my podcast. So why not collaborate with someone within the podcast community who has, let's say, design skills, right? As opposed to this person, this person can still have, whatever project they're doing, but if you're trying to if you're trying to productively put out quality content every time, you have to face the fact that if it's just you, it will take way longer to put together. But if it's you collaborating with a podcaster who, knows about design, another person who knows about editing and mixing, another person who is great at script writing, another person who is great at research, and you're just like maybe either the person with the main idea or the person whose voice is being used, credit still goes to each one of you within that podcast. It's not lost, right? So I try to talk about it, although I'll say not enough, but when I find myself in the space of podcasters, I talk about collaboration. Write a podcast, I produce a podcast, you promote it, those kind of things. And sometimes we talk about in the community, aside podcasting, what else do you do, right? Because there are also skills that we can leverage based on that in terms of building, a podcast team that can do more. So imagine that you have your very tedious 9 to 5, your personal life, and then you have yourself creating a let's say a weekly podcast, or you want to work on a project, and then you're able to collaborate with 5, 6 other podcasters within the community, and you guys take time to put it all together, as opposed to you having to do everything. The work is now split, 5, 6, 7. So it gives you time to fully concentrate on the part that resonates the most with you. It also gives you insight from 6 other people, right? Because sometimes when something is a one-way street, like, okay, I have my thoughts on, I don't know, indecent dressing. I don't know. I have my thoughts on that, and I'm just coming from this one track lane where these are my opinions and that's that, as opposed to having that opinion and somebody saying, oh, I see this, how about we expand it to blah blah blah, and another person say, oh, that's great, when we are producing it, how about we put this to buttress the point, or this to make it more relatable to listeners globally or locally. So sharing the work is a very big part of podcasting. Not everybody has the luxury to it, yes, but I think that if it's something that podcasters start exploring, then they would see that there's a lot more benefits in doing that as opposed to just having yourself be a one-stop shop.
Wow, thank you so much, Faye. Thank you so much. Now I have to confess, I asked that question for me because I am team quality. But then I find out that as much as I want to put a lot of quality into what I do, that takes me to thinking, like, maybe sometimes overthinking it or not wanting to settle for less. So the production has to be very well done. The editing, the graphics. I go as far as paying my graphics designer monthly. I almost pay for everything that I don't do for myself. And I think it's high time I tried collaborating, right? And I think that's going to. So I just wanted to hear from your perspective, and I wanted to get some bit of encouragement, which I have really, really gotten. So thank you very much, Faye, for putting this out there. Okay, now speaking of putting it out there, I would like to say to everybody listening, once again, thank you for listening, and um, well, it's not too late, but you can still share with people to join because we'll still have a couple of minutes to take questions and answers, right? So people can still join and be a part of the conversation, and they can still listen again later on because, of course, it's on Twitter Space, so it'll be there on the internet. Okay, so if you want to ask a question from our amazing guests, just request the mic. We'll make you a speaker. You'll ask your question and you get your answer. So I'll be hoping to get notifications about now for people who want to ask questions. But so far, so good. It's been an amazing conversation, right? We've got our guest, Feifei, Fikemi, Hafistinova, Selegot, and Lebang from South Africa talk about consistency in 2024. I'm just trying to wait to see if people have questions and then we can take those questions. But then this is just a short recap. We started off talking about burnouts and how burnouts can be very, destructive in our continuation or consistency process for podcasters and how we can address burnout. And then we went on to talk about discipline. We went on to talk about building a community. We talked about structure. We talked about batch creating, which is something I even wanted to talk about with Feifei. But I think Feifei has actually addressed that. We've talked about what else did we talk about? We talked about managing your emotions, right? Sometimes you're high up there and sometimes you're low, but you still need to create something. So I think we've gotten great stuff already. Mary Tech wants to ask a question. So, Mary Tech, I just accepted your requests, and I'd love you to introduce yourself, ask your question, and if possibly you want somebody in our list of guests to answer the question, you can, be specific about that. And if not, anybody who wants to respond to it will do so. So, it's all yours, Mary Tech. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much. I'm really, really happy I was able to join this because I think I needed this a lot. I just started my podcasting like last month. Yeah, I started January, and I don't know. I kind of feel it's because anytime my podcasting, because I do post every Sunday, and I do feel like first of all maybe I don't have much audience, and secondly I feel like I'm not really captivating. I'm not catching their attention. And another thing is I feel like, which is the most important thing, I feel tired sometimes because especially when I check the analytics and all that, I feel reluctant to even do the next one. Or maybe when the next one is coming up, because I'm supposed to like write down the topics or write down a list of things that I'm supposed to talk about at least for a month, but I didn't do that. And whenever the next one is coming, I really feel reluctant to like maybe do it or even think about the topic. Sometimes nothing will even come to mind. Like I'll just be blank. So I don't know what I needed. If it's a discipline, if it's motivation, if it's commitment, I don't really know exactly what is missing. So I just need, I think, a little bit of advice in all this part.
Mm. All right. Thank you so much, Mary. Um, I want to let you know that you're not alone in this. And to show you that you're not alone, I want to ask our audience, like every other person here, if you've ever felt anything that Mary Tech has felt. She started podcasting about a month ago. So for those of you that have been doing it for like over a month, a year, 2 years or so, drop an emoji, drop a love emoji, the purple one, just to show that she's not alone in this. Quickly, let's do that. Let's do that. I'm gonna do mine now. Oh, mine. Yep. Seems I'm the only one here, right? Anyway, while you guys do that to just show your support and to show, oh, I love this. Gina, thank you. Eniola, thank you. Thank you, Feifei, thank you. Gracie, thank you. The pod, oh my god, everybody feels the same way. Okay, so Mary Tech, you see that you're not alone, so I'll leave it to any of the guests. I'm not going to mention names now. If you feel inspired to respond to Mary, please do so. She's not alone in this. We all want to hear. I know we've said a lot of things, right? The answers have been said earlier, but maybe she just needs something a bit more, right? So just
Yeah,
say something to
a
her.
bit more specific.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. She said a bit more specific. Um, Fikemi, Hafistinova, Selegot, Feifei, you guys still have something off your sleeve?
Okay, I think I'm going to go. Shout out to you, Mary, and congrats on starting your podcast. Um, I'd say T Code said, it's very much relatable, right? And I hope it feels good, knowing that you feel good knowing that you're not the only person in this, right? But one advice I would give, which is something that I started doing, is I had to fall in love with doing it genuinely, because like when I started, right, in 2018, there weren't a lot of people who knew about podcasting. So I had to face, basically, whenever I shared my links with people, it was a whole conversation of what is a podcast, like why you, like it was so like they were asking me so many weird questions, like why are you doing a podcast, and I'm like, because I want to, you know. So it was, yeah, I had to do, like, you have to just deal with a lot of conversations and just explain to people. But what I did, right, when people weren't really listening and the reviews weren't encouraging, or I wasn't getting enough listens, I would actually listen to other podcasters that I enjoyed listening to. I still do it now. There are obviously some times now where I'm just like, ooh, I thought a lot more people enjoy listening to this. And when I'm not feeling motivated to record another episode, or I'm just like feeling a bit down, I listen to podcasts I genuinely enjoy listening to, because that reminds me how beautiful podcasting is. Because to be fair, with podcasting, the views or listens build up over time because they're permanent. There's some episodes I recorded in 20, I think it was an episode I recorded in 2020 during the pandemic that recently started getting a lot of listens, and I was just so confused. In my mind, I was like, who shared this? Right. And over time, it has built up. But because I was able to remind myself and just listen to other people to encourage me and just remember why I started, I was able to keep going. And over time, the listens kept, increasing. So I just try to avoid um just focusing on just the reviews and listens. Yes, it's really beautiful, and I'm not going to lie, it's very encouraging getting a review from, even if it's one person. But if there's no review at all from that episode, I would recommend you listen to a podcast you really enjoy listening to, and also try to re-strategize. Like, try to listen to your own episode and try to figure out, like, okay, what could I have done better? Should I have handled this better? And all of that. But genuinely, just stick to your passion and like what made you interested in the first place, because that would help. And write down the little wins. So the times where people actually sent reviews, keep them in a folder. I've had reviews from like 2018, so I keep them in a folder. I have all of them in a folder, and I read them again anytime I'm feeling some type of way, and it just encourages me. So I hope this helps.
Wow.
Well,
That's awesome. Mary, go on, please.
thank you so much. Yeah, that's really specific. Thank you so much. It really helps, and I hope that helps me too. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So, Hafistinova and Sedegod has stuff to say to you. So, let's have the both of them before Richie. Hafistinova, over to you now.
Talking, the listenership, and maybe nobody listens to your podcast because you're starting out and stuff like that. I think something that I did that worked for me at the beginning was to have some couple of trusted friends that I know that they will always give me, like a criticism, like constructive criticism, whereby whenever I do something and I share with them, they're always there to, like, correct me and tell me this is what I do. So I have like those kind of people. So what I do is when I put out the episode, I like go there and choke their neck. If I put out an episode today and I see that throughout the whole day nobody has listens, then I go to their DM and I say, hey, you, oh yeah, listen to this thing. Tell me if I pronounce this word right. Tell me if my English here was wrong. Tell me if this. In a way, when I do that, they are forced to listen all through, and that gives me, at least, even if it's one, even if it's two, right? That gives me listen. That's what I do. But at the end of the day, also one thing I've always do, or one thing I've always had at the back of my mind is, there's this thing that I always feel like, no matter how you are in the world, there's always someone that has the mindset or that has the kind of creativity juice that you have, like you. So if you are putting out something, just have it at the back of your mind that there's someone somewhere that will definitely listen to it, even if it is one. And the moment one person can listen to it, be very rest assured that another day another person will listen. From one it will multiply to two, from two it will multiply to three. The thing is, when you start first, it's going to be very, very tricky for you to be able to have the numbers and the audience to build on, but you have to, the more that some people are waiting for you to get to your maybe 50th episode before they start listening. It's not like they are not seeing what you're doing, but they want to see how far you can take it, and they'll be like, oh, okay, now I think she has gone 2 months, 3 months, okay, now let me join, right? And then they will even have the one coming back to tell you that, oh, when you started, I thought you were not going to, maybe it's just one of those things you just do and you just stop, but now that I see how far you've gotten, I can now continue to follow you. So just you allow yourself to do it because you enjoy it, and that's the most important thing. If you don't enjoy doing it, that is when you start first, the whole numbers and everything will get to you. But the moment you are
Mm.
very certain that this is what I enjoy doing, for the start, all those things will not matter. The moment you pick up your mic or you pick up your phone and you begin to record and you feel happiness in you, then that
Mm.
is what matters for the start.
Bam. And that's it from Hafiz Nova. Thank you, man.
Thank you, so
That's,
thank you.
yeah, that's really on point. So, Selegot, let's hear what you have to say.
All right, so I was going to add that yeah, you need to think about your why. So why did you start this podcast? For me, my podcast, I wanted to document, the filmmakers and what went into their decision making process and what inspired some of their films. So for me, in a way, like I was creating this podcast for posterity. Like, okay, at this time in Nigerian film history, this person existed and this is what they were about. So that always kind of keeps me grounded and helps me, like, stay focused on the goal. So I think, like thinking about your why or trying to remember your why, it will kind of keep you going on the tough days. And I mean, eventually, from joining rooms like this, you meet other people, people learn about your podcast, things will eventually get better. It's just, you're still at the beginning of your journey, so don't be too bothered by the numbers. Just keep doing the work and you'll be all right.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Really appreciate.
Thank you, Mary, too, for bringing that question up. You ended up, giving our speakers more points to share, and thank you very much. So, as we gradually come to the end of today's Pod Breaks Africa, let's get Richie to talk. Yes, Richie's hand has been up and he has a question. So as we're listening to Richie, please guys, let's connect. We've been talking about collaborating as well, so try to follow other people on this space as I have been doing, and I'll keep following other people on the space so that we can build network. So Richie, kindly ask your question.
Hi, people. So I don't have a question. I just wanted to speak to what Mary Tech asked. So I just wanted to give my own opinion about what she can do to encourage her to keep on pushing. So basically, Halverston said this in his opening submission, and he said it he just concluded now. So basically, the thing is that you need to find a community, like you need to have a little community of friends. That's what I did. That's what helped me. I have a little community of friends where I even created a WhatsApp group. So I go there, I drop my links there. If I have a new episode, I drop it there. They go, they listen. If there's anywhere I made a mistake or they feel I can do better, they give me those feedbacks. Even when you're selling something, your immediate consumers are your family and friends. So if you have that community of family and friends listening into your podcast, they will give you honest feedbacks. And you having those honest feedbacks, you can capitalize on them and just make your podcast more better. When it comes to motivation as well, Hafizson said it. He said sometimes his friends will just send him a message, oh, bro, is there no new episode? So things like that, you need to just create a community, a little community of people of like minds, and they will encourage you when you are down and give you heads up when you need to do what you need to do. Thank you very much. Auntie Code, I'm a big fan of yours. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I will work on that definitely.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I really appreciate everything that has been said so far. It's been an amazing 1 hour, 30 minutes spent on this space. And I really look forward to the next edition of the Podbreaks Africa. But before we round up, all the we've been doing here, talking about how to show up consistently in 2024 as a podcaster, I would really love that every of our guests can give their closing remarks. So I know they've said a lot, they've given us hacks, structure, principle, and all of that. But if there are anything that you would love to add, or just your closing remarks generally, now is the time to do so. So over to you, Feifei.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for having me on this discussion. I'll just like to say that no matter how tacky it seems at the beginning, your story is important and someone will always listen. So keep doing what you do.
That's very short, concise, and simple, but very powerful as well. Keep doing what you are doing, guys, and thank you, Faye. Let's go to Fikemi, the podcaster.
Okay, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and shout out to APVA. You guys are doing a lovely job. Thank you for being intentional about podcasters. Um, Lastly, I'd like to say that in everything, just like make sure you enjoy the process, because if you don't, podcasting is going to start looking like a chore, and I'm sure nobody likes to, you know, do something they love and then start doing it as a chore. Like, it just becomes a burden. So make sure you enjoy the process. If you need to take a break, take a break, because burnout is real, right? If you need to take a break, take a break. And don't compare yourself to other podcasters. You're your own podcaster and you're great at being your own podcaster. Yeah.
Wow, that's so powerful. Thank you so much, Fikemi. You guys are saying great stuff. I think let's take a break and give our guests a clap emoji. Everybody, can you just do that quickly, just to appreciate them before we get to Afistinova and Select God? They've been amazing, guys. They've shared their personal tips, hacks, how they do this, how they make it work, and they keep sharing. So thank you guys. I love it. Thank you all for clapping. That's very, very encouraging. Awesome. Awesome. I can imagine how this place is like. Woo! All right, guys. Thank you. Now let's go to Hafistinova. Your closing remarks. Hey, Hafistinova.
Uh,
Okay, go on.
yeah, I'm here. Okay. So I think basically the only thing I would just say is, you start is just, just going. You started. Starting is the most difficult part. Doesn't mean it's going to get easier, but starting is the most difficult part. And the moment you find the courage to start, then just keep going and just take. You'll be fine, and you'll do well at the end of the day.
Awesome. You've started. Keep going. Don't stop. Keep going. Thank you so much, Hafistinova. It was great having you on this Twitter Space event. And now to Selegot, give us your closing remarks.
Okay, for me, I'll just add that you should, you know, enjoy the process and, yeah, just think of little ways incrementally that you can, make the experience better for your audience. Like, there are a million and one things to, keep tweaking with your podcast, and it doesn't matter where you start from. There's always room, and I guess it's kind of exciting that there's always something you can improve on with your podcast. So don't overwhelm yourself. Just do it little by little, and your audience will appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Selegot. That's very good one. Don't overwhelm yourself. Just take it little by little, poco a poco, like my music teacher used to say. Yeah, and I think that's it for tonight. It's been amazing. We've heard a lot from our guests, and I want to encourage everybody as we wrap up that we should reflect, even after this, right? Reflect on the things that we've learned so far in this 1 hour, 30 minutes. Reflect on them, and try to commit yourself to implementing at least one of these new strategies. Talk about discipline, structure, try to apply structure, try to schedule your podcast appropriately, create a community for your podcast. Try to also balance your emotions sometimes. And if you need to take a break, please do. And all of the things that has been said so far, try to implement them. It's been an amazing time, and it's been my pleasure, guys, to be the host. I'd also like you to know that the recording will be available soon so that you can listen again. And you can also share to another podcaster that would need it. Share to other podcast communities so that they can enjoy all that we've enjoyed today. And I see us becoming better, consistent podcasters in 2024. Thank you to not just my guests, but to you who have been listening to us since you joined this Twitter space. You are the real MVP. It is because of you that APVA exists. I'm talking about the Association of African Podcasters and Voice Artists, and we would love to continuously serve you. Speaking of serving you, we've got our community on different platforms, especially here on social media. We're here on Twitter, so if you're not following us, it's a good time to start following us and follow other people as well, so that we can, what's the word now? Collaborate, network, and help be of, good help to each other. So join us on our different communities. We're on Telegram, and also visit our website at apva.africa, where you can apply to become a member of the association, and we'll really be happy to have you. Also, we have other events coming up real soon. For instance, we have Hangout with APVA. Now, Hangout with APVA is also a time where we come together to discuss things that are related to not just podcasting, but also voiceover. So for my voiceover artists, it'll be a great time for us to actually hang out with APVA, with APVA. So that is happening on the 23rd of February. I'll be co-hosting that alongside Guinevere Jones, and we'll be looking at understanding intellectual property for audio creatives. You should not miss this one, and I'll tell you why. This is going to be not just podcast and voiceover artists or podcasters having this conversation, but we have the president of the Intellectual Properties Lawyers Association of Nigeria, in person of Folarin Aluko, who is our guest or our guest speaker on that particular edition of Hangout with APVA. So please don't miss that for anything. It's on the 23rd of February, and set your reminder. I would really love to have us here. And it's going to be happening right here on Twitter, okay? It's going to be happening on Twitter Space. So I'd love to see you there. And finally, we'll be having the Intellectual Property Clinic. That's on February 29th, 2024. It's just like more of an extension of the conversation about understanding intellectual property for audio creatives. This is 2024. We need to know as much as we can to protect what we do as creatives. So I hope to see us in this event, and it'll be so great. So thank you all for being a part of this. Thanks to Feifei, thanks to Fikemi, thanks to Afistinova, Selegot, and to Lebang Kosana, South African guest podcaster as well. Yeah. Who joined us earlier, but she's going to stay all through for some reasons. But thank you to everybody. My name is Tolulope Kolade, popularly known as T-Code, a podcaster, the host of the Everything Voiceovers podcast, The African Perspective. I'm also a voiceover artist. And what else? I like to talk. All right, guys. This is where we draw the curtain on today's episode of Podbreaks Africa. See you guys next month. And I wish everybody was a speaker now so that we can just say our goodbyes with our mouths. But if you're a speaker, you can take advantage of that opportunity right now before we close the room in about a minute or 60 seconds. And the rest of you, just use the emojis. Let's communicate with your emojis. From me to you, I say bye. Every other person, you can mute and say your byes. And
Bye bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Visit apva.africa to learn more about the Association of African Podcasters and Voice Artists.